What's good, everybody? We've got a lot to talk about in Cubs land here. This has been honestly one of the most fun off-season weeks as a Cubs fan in a very long time. There's energy all over the fan base, and it's been a thrill. Let's get right into it and waste no time here. Let's begin with the major news. Kyle Tucker is a Chicago Cub. In a blockbuster trade, Jeff Passan announced that the Cubs acquired Kyle Tucker from Houston in exchange for Isaac Paredes, Hayden Wesneski, and this year's first-round pick Cam Smith. I'm going to be honest. I was skeptical at first of getting rid of a prospect of Cam Smith's caliber for a potential rental in Kyle Tucker, but after taking some time to think, I'm glad we did. The Cubs farm system is deep. It's a unanimous top 5 system in baseball, so you can afford to take gambles like this. I may be a little biased because I am a huge prospect guy, but I still think Smith will be a star in the show one day. That being said, he was remarkably good in his short Cubs organization stretch post-draft. Almost too good. He's still very young and reached Double-A. There will inevitably be some growing pains at some point, and there is still a ton of development needed. Furthermore, the Cubs have a prospect by the name of Matt Shaw that they are banking on, and they are very confident in him. Next was Isaac Paredes, who was a disappointment for the Northsiders in 2024 after getting acquired at the trade deadline for Christopher Morel and Hunter Biggie. In his short time with the Cubs, he slugged only 3 home runs and hit .233 with an OPS of .633, knocking in 25 runs in just 52 games. That isn't going to cut it. Unsurprisingly, this wasn't a good match as Paredes is a notorious dead pull hitter. Wrigley has some of the deepest corners in the league. Expect Paredes to be great for the Astros considering the Crawford boxes, but don't be upset. Lastly, Hayden Wesneski has shown flashes of potential greatness, but never put it all together in a Cubs uniform, and it felt as though the Cubs parting ways with him was inevitable. Especially after the mini Twitter fiasco he had after the Texans beat the Bears, the fan base seemed to have turned on him, if not for his poor play. Wesneski had a not terrible 3.86 ERA and 1.13 whip, but was constantly on a train between Des Moines and Chicago as just honestly, there are better options out there. Now let's talk about the return. Kyle Tucker. If you asked me to use one word to describe Kyle Tucker, it'd be superstar. Case closed. Many people seem to underrate Tucker because he plays the game the right way. He's not a super flashy player like a Juan Soto or Javier Baez, but he slugs, plays defense, runs hard, and drives in runs. In 2024, he hit .289 with a .408 on base, .585 slug, and a .993 OPS. This is the kind of player the Cubs have longed for. Oh, and did I mention a 4.7 WAR? Again, I repeat, in 78 games. Outside of his 2024 campaign, the past 3 seasons prior, he was a 5+ WAR player and slugged for 30 homers 2 out of the 3 seasons, with a third being 29 homers. If Jed Hoyer and the Cubs were going to take a big swing on the trade market this offseason, Kyle Tucker is the guy to do it on. Hopefully Hoyer tries to extend him prior to the season, which will no doubt be hard considering Soto just signed for $765 million, but he did say he was open to anything. Next, a lot of millennial Cubs fans are thrilled that Sammy Sosa issued an apology and is being welcomed back to the Chicago Cubs organization. He is most likely going to make an appearance at this year's Cubs convention, where it is very possible Sosa gets inducted into the Cubs Hall of Fame. You can't mention the Chicago Cubs history without mentioning Sammy Sosa. He brought his passion, determination, and energy to the ballpark every time he put on the blue pinstripes. He brought eyes to the boys in blue, especially that summer of '98 with McGuire. Regardless of your stance on the man, I personally believe his return was long overdue. Let's briefly go over the signings as of late. First was Matt Boyd on a 2-year, $29 million deal, and this move is interesting considering his injury history. He hasn't thrown over 100 innings since 2019, but he had an electric postseason with Cleveland this past year, and the Cubs are hoping that they can keep him healthy and in the rotation. I like the move considering the price is reasonable, and the Cubs have the starting depth to make a move like this. Furthermore, Carson Kelly signed the 2-year, $11.5 million deal with the Cubs with a mutual option in 2027. This was a sleeper move for the Cubs, as we know how bad the catcher position was for the majority of 2024 and how many games that cost this team. Kelly is a solid catcher who will back up and split time with Miguel Amaya. Last year, he hit .238 with 313 on base, 374 slug, 687 OPS, 9 home runs, and 37 RBIs. That's a marginal move that I like as he's a solid defensive catcher who is competent from the plate. So far, 2 notable trades have transpired, with the first being trading prospect Alfonso Rosario to Cleveland for reliever Eli Morgan. Morgan threw 42 innings last year and he had an ERA of 1.93 while striking out 34 and only walking 11. Morgan is a nice add, especially considering the prospect cost to bolster this Cubs bullpen. The next one had a lot of people angry, and I could understand why, but fans need to understand the full picture. Cody Bellinger and $5 million was traded to the New York Yankees for right-handed pitcher Cody Petit. This was essentially a salary dump. This takes the handcuffs off Jed Hoyer and allows him to be more versatile with his spending for the remainder of the offseason. Sure, the return was not great at all, but again, the Cubs are only eating $2.5 million a year for the next 2 years. Had they taken more salary, the return would have been better. This move was good considering Bellinger had nowhere to play, as the outfield consists of Happ, PCA, and Tucker. First base was said to be Michael Busch's position, and the DH seems to be Seiya Suzuki. It is now on Jed Hoyer to use this freed money on another starter and a couple relievers. I'm going to close out this episode with some news that broke today. The Chicago Cubs today, as I'm recording this, December 20th, are expected to meet with superstar pitcher from Japan, Roki Sasaki. In my previous video, I had made a mistake in that I estimated a contract for him very poorly, and that's my bad. He is subject to international pool money similar to Shohei Ohtani when he first signed with the Angels, as opposed to Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who received a big contract from the jump by the Dodgers. This means any team in theory could afford Sasaki's services. If somehow he chooses the Chicago Cubs, that would be an incredible bonus, so hopefully everything goes well and he falls in love with Chicago like how Shota Imanaga did. That's all she wrote for this episode of Northside Insider. Thanks for listening, guys. Hopefully soon I can record an emergency episode because the Cubs did something major. Go Cubs, go.